When I first looked at this apartment, it just truly felt like it was all disconnected. The kitchen was boxed in, the living room didn't have a good flow, and the whole thing, well, it just felt compartmentalized. So I went back to the drawing board, and in this video, I'm going to share with you step by step how I redesigned this floor plan to make sure I got this modern, seamless open plan layout. If you are new here, my name is Linnea and I'm an architect currently on a quest to renovate 11 homes. So let's get started. Here is the existing layout of the space. And in this drawing, I have already redesigned our office space and our bedroom. And actually, if you haven't seen those transformations, I linked the full playlist below so that you can go and watch how those rooms turn out after this one. Well, in this video, we're going to focus on the living room and kitchen space. The first thing and the last thing that I always consider when redesigning a floor plan are the sightlines. And sightlines are the visual connections that you can create between different rooms, but also between a room and the outside space. And why are these so important? Well, they help us to orientate ourselves and can help us feel many different feelings, everything from safety to curiosity, overwhelmment, or maybe relaxation and peace. For example, the desire to be able to see how our location is connected to the outside and long distances comes from when we lived on the savannah and really needed to be able to see if a predator was approaching before it's too late. We don't really have that situation anymore, but our ability to see and connect different spaces with each other are still very important for us as humans. So how do I look at this? Well, I tend to map out all the sightlines using a red marker. And when I mapped out all the sightlines for this space, it became clear that there is actually no visual connection between the kitchen and living room, and the kitchen only has one visual connection to another room, the hallway, whereas the living room connects both to our office and outside of our office, as well as to the hallway. And one kind of rule of thumb that I always use when I design more social spaces like a kitchen or a living room tend to be, is that I always want to make sure that these rooms have at least 2 visual connections with other rooms in the apartment. And currently the kitchen only has 1. So this will be the first point that I want to make sure that I address. And to fix this, I started to try out removing these wardrobes that you can see here. They are too far away from the entryway anyhow to be useful as a kind of hallway storage. And by removing them, I can very easily create a visual connection both to our bedroom, but primarily and most importantly, to the park that is just outside our bedroom window. So if you sit, for example, over here, you will now be able to see all the way through our apartment and to the outside. However, this space still feels a little bit stagnant. There is no natural flow between the kitchen and living room, and the whole living room feels a bit like a big dead end. And before I do the obvious and just demolish the whole wall between the kitchen and the living room, I already knew that this is not a load-bearing wall, so I would be able to do so. I decided to take a step back and consider how are we going to use this space. And I call this process zoning. And the idea of zoning is to map out the different functions or activities that you want to be able to do in your space. And in my case, I started to look at cooking. I really love to cook, so I knew I wanted a larger kitchen that I currently have. At the same time, I don't want to move the plumbing to a new location. That would cost a lot of money. So I decided to keep the cooking activity in the same location, but make it larger. And this is something that we're now able to do as we remove these wardrobes and actually are able to extend this back wall so that we have more wall space to build a bigger kitchen on. Next, I moved on to dining. My husband and I like to have a relaxed spot where we can have breakfast, for example, and a slightly more formal dining space for dinners or if you have guests over. And since we have a view out of the ocean on this side of the building, I want to take advantage of this. So I decided to place the dining activity right next to the windows in the living room space. Then for a more relaxed, informal dining spot, I will leave that to a later stage. I'll just make sure to make a note that I will include this in my kitchen design. So when I move on to creating a detailed design for the kitchen, I will see how I can incorporate. Then comes lounging. We like to unwind in the evening in a sofa, most often watching a movie. And if you want to have a space where you can watch movies, you don't want too much direct sunlight. So to take advantage of the fact that the back end of the living room is slightly darker, this is where I will create a lounging corner. Now, we still have one area that doesn't have a activity or a zoning plan. So I decided at this point, at least, to zone it as kind of reading, resting corner. Joachim sometimes sits and draw while I cook food or bake something. So I think we can do something interesting and again, take advantage of that view and connection to the outside here. And once all the different zones and activities are mapped out, it's time to study how we like to move between these different activities, because this will determine how we need to design the floor plan. And in our particular case, we need to be able to walk with food and drinks between the kitchen and this dining area. However, we don't run so much between our sofa lounging corner and our kitchen. However, there will be a lot of movement between the sofa and the dining area, because after dinner we often move on to the couch, or if we have guests, we might start in the couch with a drink and then we move on to the dining space. Similarly, the little reading nook needs to have a visual and vocal connection to the kitchen. As I said, sometimes one of us sit and read or draw or do something else whilst the other one is cooking, and then it's nice to be able to just ask a question or chat while that is happening. However, you might have completely different needs. For example, if you have kids, you might have them doing their homework in the living room while you're preparing food. Or maybe you like to have your kitchen as this kind of drink station when you're hosting guests for a dinner party. And then you might want to have a close connection between the kitchen and the counter lounge space. And that's the beauty of redesigning a floor plan. It should really reflect how you live your life, and allowing yourself to really be specific of how do you move between different activities is one of the secrets to a really good floor plan design. So with all of that said, let's move back to the case of removing the wall between the kitchen and living room. When I look at the movement closer and where the main traffic will be, it is clear that I do want to remove part of the wall, but actually, I think I like to keep a piece that will create a bit of a visual separation between the kitchen and the lounging space. We don't always do the dishes in the evening, and being able to block that out when we sit and unwind in a sofa could be really nice, for example. And since we don't move so much between these two spaces, that is a great way to create a bit of guidance for the space without making it feel closed in. Another advantage of not removing the full wall is that you now have an extra wall where you can design storage, you can hang a TV or other items that are key to your needs. And actually, another secret to testing out floor plans is that if it feels scary, maybe you're able to remove a part of the wall before you consider moving the full one, because it's not always so accessible for everyone to just remove a full wall. So taking it step by step and maybe just doing a wide door opening could be your first step. Now, we have studied the sightlines. We have looked at the zoning of the space and how we want to move between these different zones. And this is the point where I start to draw many iterations. So when I have, for example, said that, well, let's remove a part of the wall, but not the full one, this is actually a longer exercise than me just seeing that right away. I tend to draw everything between 10 to 50 different variations. And the reason for this is that there's so many ways that you can redesign a floor plan. But let's skip all those iterations and I'll just show you the final floor plan that I decided on. And as you see, the wardrobes are now removed. This wall is slightly longer and we have demolished the wall between the kitchen and living room. So now we have new visual sightlines, we have new spaces and flows to walk through, and the apartment is not feeling so compartmentalized anymore. It works beautiful for us, but it's also actually pretty easy for a future owner to redesign how they want to place different function in this space. But as I said, there could be many other iterations of this floor plan. So if you have any ideas that you think that I should consider that I haven't already, leave them in the comment below and maybe I'll incorporate some of your thoughts. That was it for today's video, but in the coming videos, we are now going to remodel the whole living room, building that mid-wall section, putting in new flooring, new colors for the walls, decor, all of it. So if you don't want to miss that, consider subscribing to my channel. And if you learned something from today's video, give it a thumbs up and I will see you in the